And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. This is our 61st edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 378th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, January 25th, 2018. I am your host, Jared Morris. Let's begin this week as we begin every episode of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And this week's banner moment occurred about a half hour or so before the Maryland game, because that is when Juwan Morgan came onto McCracken Court and participated in warmups with his teammates like nothing was wrong with his ankle. I know it feels like forever ago, but if you go back to that last Friday game against Michigan State, Indiana obviously did not play well up there. We lost Juwan Morgan. It felt like everything was kind of falling apart. None of us really knew when Juwan would be back. Some of us, I include myself there, were kind of fearing the worst, that he might have to miss several games. And we know what that would have meant for this Indiana team. So for him to come out and be ready to play right from the get-go in that Maryland game was obviously huge for this team, for his continued development. And since then, since that moment, he has played 67 minutes of basketball over 2 games. He has scored 53 points on 22 of 29 shooting from the field and has grabbed 14 rebounds, dished out 7 assists, and added 3 steals and 2 blocks. Oh, and he scored the game-winning points in an important home victory over Maryland. So in a season of lots of up and downs, lots of inconsistencies, Juwan Morgan has been the constant. And one of the greatest things that he's been able to do this season is take some nicks, absorb some injuries, and get right back out there and play. And shoot, some of his best performances have come right after he has been injured. So banner moment to Juwan Morgan for recovering quickly from that ankle injury against Michigan State and being one of the best players in the Big Ten in the 2 games since. All right, let me now introduce my esteemed co-hosts for this week's show. To my left, we have one of the world's most respected bracketologists, who now refuses to answer any more questions about Indiana's NCAA tournament chances unless the Hoosiers sweep Purdue, Ohio State, and Michigan State. And he is the longtime president of the Robert Johnson Fan Club. He is Andy Bottoms. Andy, what is your Bottoms line on the past week in Indiana basketball?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that there have been 3 games since we talked on the radio last week. And, I think to take a step back with a couple of these, I think if you really look at these last 6 games or so, at least that's what I looked at, kind of the post-Duran games, if you will, and you look at how IU's done offensively, points per possession wise, they're anywhere throughout the Michigan State game. The other 5 games were all between 0.99 and 1.06 points per game, or points per possession. And it just kind of goes to show in a lot of ways just how small the margin for error for this team really is. And one of the things I wrote in the email after the Maryland game was how, there were a lot of numbers in that game that didn't really look that great. IU didn't get a lot of offensive rebounds. They had a fairly low assist rate. Didn't shoot the ball well from 3-point range. Didn't shoot the ball well from the free throw line. They kind of won in spite of themselves to a certain extent. And I think it was telling in some ways, because that's the kind of game that IU teams the last couple of years probably wouldn't have won. A game that really required them to play well on the defensive end to cover up some of their blemishes on the offensive side. And I think we kind of saw the same thing in the Illinois game, where they had a lot of blemishes and they almost did enough because they were good enough defensively to overcome those kinds of things. But I think, if you look at those couple games, both those could have gone either way. They could have been 2-0. They could have been 0-2. But both, not great offensive performances. But I think it kind of shows where this team has evolved from a defensive standpoint to, the defense is keeping this team in games. And I think that's a positive sign for the future. I think we've seen enough basketball from this team to know they're not going to become an offensive juggernaut, no matter how well Juwan Morgan has played, as you just mentioned. And so that defense is going to have to kind of carry the day, and it becomes extremely important over these next 3 games. But I think, when you take these games in totality and look back a little bit further, as opposed to just, focusing in on the game against Illinois that I'd probably prefer not to talk too much about, even though I know that we will. It really just kind of goes to show how the recipe for this team winning has changed so much just over the course of his season, and how small that margin for error really is in the end.
Yeah. All right, and to my right, we have a man who is still hungover from the Trevor Hoffman Hall of Fame election after party that he attended last night. He's a columnist for The Big Lead, and he is a man who lives in the Pacific time zone and is thus perfectly suited to handle post-game show duties for games that are slated to start at 9 o'clock Eastern, but are then delayed by the Big Ten Network and then drag out even longer because of near constant foul calls and free throws. But alas, he left us Eastern and Central time zoners hanging last night, all so that he could celebrate an athlete who, in his most active season, participated in 90 of his team's roughly 1,458 innings. In KenPom terms, that would mean he played 6% of available minutes, which is just a shade more active than Clifton Moore has been this year for the Hoosiers. He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your rant from the past week in Indiana basketball?
Well, it's going to be about you now. How dare you speak ill of Trevor Hoffman? St. Trevor is going to the Hall of Fame.
As will that introduction. That was very well done.
I'm sorry you're a White Sox fan, all right? And you just have nothing to be happy about except for putting down other people. But
2005.
St. Trevor is headed to the Hall of Fame, and we're all very happy out here. I think, look, you look at Indiana, and as Andy said, that game could have gone either way, and that shows you that Illinois really isn't that good, and that loss is going to hurt. I think Illinois has played better than their record, but they're not a good team, and the fact that Indiana lost to them is really a bummer because – but if you go on the road, we can talk about the horrendous officiating all we want, and I'm sure you guys did yesterday. But at the same time, you turn the ball over 18 times on the road in the Big Ten, and you miss 13 free throws and go 16 of 29, you're going to lose that game. And if you had told me that was what happened before the game, I would have told you, oh, they're going to lose. The fact that they were in the game is almost a joke because they shouldn't have been. And at some point, I mean, they shot 56.8% from the field in that game and lost. And it's because of the turnovers and it's because of the free throws. They out-rebounded Illinois. I thought they outplayed Illinois for long stretches of the game, but then they just couldn't convert at the line, and that kills you. And you look at the Maryland game that they wound up winning, 9 of 16 from the free throw line. You look at Northwestern, they won by 20, but they were 12 of 22 from the free throw line. If you can't take advantage, I mean, free is in the name of free throws. They are giving you points, and if you cannot take advantage of that consistently, I get it. You have one bad shooting night from the line. It's a little contagious, but this team consistently is not taking advantage of the opportunities it's getting at the line, and you lose by 2 games and you miss 2 points and you miss 13 free throws. That's on you. I mean, you could be upset about the officiating all you want, but you've got to take care of your own business. There's only certain things you can control. And at the free throw line, we love Juwan Morgan. He's playing great, but you can't go 3 of 8 from the free throw line when you're the primary scoring option for a team. You're Colin Hartman. You can't go 1 of 4 from the free throw line and 0 of 4 from 3. You got to make your shots. And a guy like Robert Johnson needs to be able to get to the line and make his free throws. He didn't even get a free throw last night. So look, I think that Indiana, there's a lot of blame to go around in this one, but Indiana can look squarely at itself in the mirror and understand it had the chances to win the game. It could not get it done. And it's something, again, we've talked about this year repeatedly about a building year. That's a lesson these guys got to learn. And maybe going into next year, you work a little harder on your free throws in the offseason or whatever, or tweak your mechanics. But, it's something you've got to do. And it's such an easy thing to work on because it's just effort and it's concentration.
Hold that thought, because we're going to talk more about the shooting and the free throws in particular, because it was, as you might imagine, the most popular topic in terms of questions and rants that people had after that game. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up. We'll also talk about Indiana's guards and Devonte Green specifically and their up and down play. Andy will go inside the numbers a bit. We'll talk a little bit about this Purdue game coming up, and then we'll also answer some of the other questions that you all sent in. All of that coming here on Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to that stuff, a quick reminder that the next time you are looking for tickets to a sporting event or concert, remember our friends at SeatGeek. You can download their app, which is incredibly convenient and easy to use, or if you just want an easy to remember URL that will take you directly to the IU basketball ticket listings on SeatGeek's website, use the URL iutickets.shop. So I actually had someone email me just a couple of days ago, asked me what the promo code was. It's Assembly if you're using SeatGeek, so you get the $20 back, and they actually got tickets for the Illinois game. Unfortunately, they didn't get to see a victory as they should have if Indiana would have made their free throws. But that's an example of someone going to the page on SeatGeek, looking up the listings and finding a listing for the Indiana-Illinois game. And there are listings there for every game remaining on Indiana's schedule, all the home games, all the road games. SeatGeek has you covered. So check out the latest ticket deals on the SeatGeek app or at iutickets.shop. And if it is your first time using SeatGeek, then don't forget that promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY. Use it when you make that first purchase, and you will get $20 back after that purchase. Again, the promo code is ASSEMBLY. You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. And let's talk a little bit about the shooting, guys. I mean, Ryan, you kind of ranted there about free throws. We spent a lot of time on the post-game show talking about that. I've seen in the responses from people on Twitter and in our Slack channel and in message boards, a lot of blame being kind of assigned to different places. Some people are saying that's totally on the players. You have upperclassmen like Juwan Morgan and Colin Hartman. Those guys have been good free throw shooters in the past. They need to show the mental toughness to step up and make them. You have other people saying, hey, we've got this new coaching staff in there. They're really emphasizing defense and reducing turnovers. Are they even practicing shooting? Because the three-point shooting is down and the free throw shooting is down. And so they're blaming that. Where do you – and look, let me just offer this caveat. It's impossible for us to know because we're far removed from the team. We're not there in practice. We don't know how much time is being spent on this. So we're just kind of spitballing and theorizing here. But in general, when you see a performance like that from the line and the performance that you've seen the last few games for a program that has typically been pretty good from the free throw line and from players who have a track record of being good free throw shooters, where does the blame go for you for these free throw woes?
I think I think when it gets to this point and it's this bad, I think it's mental for these guys. I think it's just, regardless of how much you practice it, when you get in the game and you're thinking, oh, I can't miss this, I can't miss this, I can't miss this, you're going to miss it. And, they're not, a lot of them, they're not missing badly. It's a lot of rimming out. It's a lot of, in and out, maybe shooting it a little too hard off the back rim. I mean, so it's not like they're just shacking these things or DeAndre Jordan or Andre Roberson or any of those guys where, they're just so far off. It doesn't, it's crazy. It looks like the releases are for the most part pretty good, but I do see some hesitation. I think Juwan Morgan is hesitating on his as he reaches the top of his release. He's kind of stopping and then releasing as opposed to just making it one smooth motion. And to me, that suggests he's thinking about it. And honestly, if you're thinking about it, I think, if you're thinking about it, I think that's the first sign that you're going to miss your shot. And I think you just kind of have to go with it, and go in with, realize there's no pressure. If you go in maybe with the attitude that, you put it in your head that, hey, this is just a bonus. If we score, it's great. Instead of we need this point, we need this point, we need this point. I think maybe you take some of the pressure off yourself, but the coaching staff certainly has to be involved and figure out how to make it so these guys feel less pressure there and think less when they're at the line. I'm sure they're shooting tons of free throws and there's repetition. The key is getting them to a place where they're comfortable at the line, and that's going to, make it easier to make those free throws. If anybody who's played basketball, when you're at the free throw line, all eyes are on you. It's a spotlight. If you're thinking about it, you're going to miss. I mean, you are. It just has to be natural, and it has to come naturally. So we'll see what happens. I know this is something that the coaching staff has to be working on because it's been an issue for this team all season. This isn't something that's popped up the last few weeks.
I didn't get a chance to listen to Archie's radio show, but I did see a few tweets that basically relayed some comments that he made that they're going to start doing some more competition style shooting in practice, kind of tournament style, and keeping track, of what guys are hitting, just to kind of make it, I guess maybe add a little bit of pressure to it, add a little bit of accountability to it. But they are going to be trying something different. It's interesting because, I mean, you're right. You do have to step up there and shoot free throws without thinking about it. But, you also, on the other hand, people will criticize you if you miss free throws. Oh, well, they just don't care. They're just lackadaisical. They're not focused. So you need to be focused, but in a sense, unfocused because you're not focused on the moment. I mean, there's some mental gymnastics there that you have to go through, but I think the key is you have to have it so burned into your muscle memory and you're so comfortable because you put in the practice that you can go up there and you're not fearful of the moment. You embrace the moment and can shoot it just like you would any other shot, kind of in the flow of the offense. And you're right. I mean, I think at some point it does become contagious because there's so many guys are missing. There's more pressure on that next guy to make it. And unfortunately, last night, unless you were Freddie McSwain, you weren't going to be making your free throws. Andy, anything that you want to add about the free throw shooting?
Yeah, only a couple quick things. I think Juwan even said in some of the post-game comments that he had after the game that he even admitted to really kind of overthinking it when he was there. And I think Ryan, I agree with what you said. And then I think, others, it's just consistency in shooting form. Devonte had a couple that looked really good that he stepped up and made. And then he had the one in the, within the last 10 seconds. And the first one, he just, pulled the string on it. Didn't really follow through at all. And so different things like that. Hartman feels like he's fallen back on everything he's shooting. And some of that's the same. And the other thing I thought was interesting, I curious to hear those comments from Archie, but I think we had even talked about this earlier in the year about some of the shooting and whether or not it was the case that they were spending so much time and they were a staff that believe some of that was more individual work outside of the, confines of practice. He some of his comments after the game last night kind of made it feel that way. I'm sure that they do, but his comment was, guys need to get in the gym and work on it and do whatever. Didn't necessarily allude to the same things that, this is something that we really hit hard in practice, and whether that's true or not, again, like you said, we're not there and don't know. So you're just kind of reading into whatever, whatever comments you hear. But those were the couple things that stood out, at least for me, post game, about what the guy said about it.
All right, Andy, you mentioned Devonte Green. Coming up in our second segment, we're going to talk about Indiana's guards, their struggles, and why it's so important for them to start playing better here down the stretch, Devonte especially. That's coming up on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. All right, perfect. 16 minutes for the first segment. Hello to everybody who is here live. Awesome to see you all. Feels like we were just here doing this, because we were 20 hours ago.
Seems about right.
Gotta love the Wednesday games with the radio show the day after.
Yeah.
Oh, and
it's more high quality Big Ten officiating going on in this Ohio State Penn State game. Good God. Guy clearly moving on a charge, and the guy with no position to see whether he's actually said or not called a charge.
At what point does the Big Ten just decide that there's a problem,
or just let players call their own fouls?
Yeah.
Seriously, we're at that point. I mean, let the crowd call the fouls.
Well, that was kind of what happened last night.
That would be better than what happened last night.
Oh, you're going to give IU the ball? Well, let's complain about it, and so you can say they had possession, and then we'll give it to them. So, but the guy who allegedly
the reason he
also got dump trucked by some other guy that basically ran through him, but that's not a foul either. So yeah,
if he did have possession, the reason he lost it was because a guy took him out at the waist. But other than that, it's.
Yeah, he would have gotten called for spearing in football the way the guy went into his chest. But other than that, just give him the ball. It's no big deal.
Yeah. It would be nice to do one of these shows without legitimate ref complaints, where you just don't notice them.
Yeah,
that just doesn't really happen very often.
Nope,
it's not the world we live in.
No,
not in our conference.
That's not the world we live in. All right, let's talk guards. And let's talk Devonte. I'll be interested to get your thoughts on Devonte, Ryan, because you obviously didn't get a chance to be on the show last night. And I'm not sure I've ever had a discussion I've been on Twitter be as polarizing as this one today about Devonte.
I mean, I thought it was we'll talk about it, but I thought it was
it was a typical Devonte game with some shades of progress. It wasn't it was just this awful game for him.
Archie really had a lot of good to say about him after the game too. Good.
Yeah, that's why I didn't understand the rancor from some people. Okay.
All right, let's get moving.
Before Andy has to.
I don't even care who wins this game.
Step away for a little while.
I just would he didn't even come close to touching him. Oh my God. Terrible.
Are they at Ohio State or Penn State?
Oh, they're at Ohio State.
All right, here we go.
Ohio State fans angry about basketball, which is really, really quite an accomplishment.
Okay, you guys ready? Yep. Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. I am Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. Don't forget that if you ever have to miss all or part of an episode of Assembly Call Radio, there are two great ways to catch up. You can subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for Assembly Call, or you can join our live Thursday night broadcast or watch the video replays by subscribing to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. So, guys, as I am wont to do sometimes before games, I like to throw out a little prediction of individual players that I think are going to have a good performance. And I just kind of had a feeling heading into the Illinois game that Devonte Green would play well. It seemed like the kind of game that would provide him an opportunity, given how Illinois likes to play defense, given kind of the skills that Devonte brings to the table, given the way that Josh Newkirk sometimes struggles in these kind of road environments against teams that really play pressure defense. And obviously, Al Durham's inconsistency. I thought Devonte would get some opportunities, and I thought he'd have a chance to make some plays. And for the most part, I think he did that. I mean, it was a pretty typical Devonte game in terms of he made some mistakes. He took a couple of bad shots. Obviously, he had a couple of really bad plays late. The pass to Juwan Morgan at the end where Indiana doesn't even get a shot off, the really careless turnover. He had a couple of possessions prior to that. Those really stick out. But I think they really ended up overshadowing some improvements that he made. I mean, he had 5 assists. He made some good passes. He was the one guard who was actually kind of challenging Illinois' defense and penetrating and setting up his teammates. And I actually thought there were some opportunities where in previous games he might have taken a bad shot, and he, didn't do that. Discretion won out, and he didn't take a bad shot. So I saw some growth from him. Not a great game by any means, but a little bit better. And, and I tweeted that before the game that I thought Devonte would have a good game. And I must have gotten that sent back to me by about 25 people, late last night, this morning, saying, boy, this tweet didn't age well. And I had to go back at them because I didn't regret it. I don't take it back. It wasn't a great game, but I thought there were some good signs from Devonte that if he can get some more minutes moving forward, maybe he can start to play a little bit better. And he really needs to, because, man, that was a bad performance from the guards last night. And this team goes as the guards go. And if those are the kind of performances we're going to get on the road, we're not going to win very many more games. So
he also made 6 of his 9 free throws, which is not happening for anybody else, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, 6 for 9 isn't good, but given the context of that game, it wasn't so bad. So
yeah, given the context of this team, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to open that up for you, Ryan, because you've been a big Devonte defender. I haven't really been, but I've seen a few things in the last couple of games that I think are a few flickers of hope that he's starting to get it a little bit. And if that can continue as he moves here in this sophomore season, I still think there's a good, serviceable player in there for his junior and senior year, and even down the stretch here. So I don't quite get all of the rancor against him after that game. It's like everybody blamed, or not everybody, but a lot of people blamed him for that loss, and I just didn't see it. I think that is a very surface level viewing of the game, if you say that.
Yeah, look, I have loved Devonte's potential for a long time. I am as frustrated with anybody with, some of the problems he brings. I think he takes bad shots from time to time. I think he, has some bad turnovers. Last night when he threw the ball right at Juwan Morgan's feet, when we were trying to tie the game. I mean, come on, you got to throw a better pass than that at the end of the game in a key situation. Juwan, because he put it at his feet, but he also fired the ball, and there was no chance for Morgan to do anything with it. So, I agree. I think that there were positives and negatives. I mean, 8 points, 2 rebounds, 5 assists. He only turned the ball over twice, which I think most people watching that game would have thought that was way higher, but it wasn't. I mean, he took care of the ball for the most part. And one of those turnovers was very late, and it was it was an up and down situation where he, again, threw the ball to the open guy, but just made a bad pass. And I do think that some of his decision-making needs to get better. I think that some of his play, and Andy's called it sort of selfish play at times, and he's right. And it's a guy who, I don't think he's openly trying to be selfish. I just think that he's making stupid plays and putting it on himself to do those things. But at the same time, we have very few guys on this team who will cold-bloodedly take a shot. And have the confidence to just take a shot and make it. And Devonte has that ability. He doesn't necessarily show it every game, the ability to make it, but he's willing to take shots, and he's willing to drive into the defense and try and make something happen, which, again, a lot of guys on this team don't do. And maybe that changes next year. Maybe with the new group of guys you get in, or maybe with some of these guys being a year older, it changes and there's other options for that, an Al Durham or Rob Finney, something like that. But right now, we don't have that from anybody else. And look, Josh Newkirk, who is a high effort guy, I have said all year I have been impressed with his effort, but he didn't play well last night at all. And
that's why he only got 12 minutes.
Exactly, and you had to have him on the bench because he was hurting you. Again, Newkirk this year, I think for the most part, has played extremely hard. I just think it's a lot of confused hustle. Not fake hustle, but confused hustle, where he doesn't know where he's supposed to be, what he's doing. He doesn't necessarily do the right things, but he's playing hard. So you respect that the guy's out there giving his all. But last night he was bad enough that you just could not have him on the floor. And Devonte is your only option other than him to handle the ball. Al Durham is not good enough to handle the ball right now. And so, that's why you've got him out there so much. And I thought that, considering he played 27 minutes, only turning the ball over twice in an up and down game like that, where Indiana had 18 turnovers, is not that bad. You'd just like to see more consistency from possession to possession for him. Okay, are you going to be a one-on-one player? Are you going to work within the offense to get your shots off of that? Are you going to, be a guy who's going to push the tempo, or are you going to slow it down? find your niche as a player on this team and go with it, but he hasn't yet. And you'd really like to see more from him because you can see the potential there as a guy who can make some things happen offensively on a team that doesn't have a lot of guys who can do stuff like that.
Yeah, and I guess my point is, it's not that he played like Yogi last night, and he's not going to be that, obviously. But, we've kind of stuck with him through so many of these ups and downs. He's finally showing a little bit of progress. Let's embrace that a little bit, I think, instead of just tearing him up for a couple key mistakes at the end of the game where we overlook all the contributions he made to keep us in that game, in a game when really only Juwan and Zach McRoberts otherwise came to play offensively. So,
Andy, are you like me? Are you kind of laughing inside that Jared was mad that people were mad at him on Twitter and yelling at him on Twitter?
I wasn't mad. No, I'm not mad about it. I embrace
offended, my friend.
No. I embrace those conversations. I embrace the opportunities to exchange ideas. I like that people would feel comfortable being honest with me about their opinions, so we can go back and forth about it.
Yeah, Twitter's not the medium for that, I don't think, these days.
Well, that's a topic for another show. But anyway, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. We're talking about Indiana's guard play. Andy, chime in if you'd like here on Devonte Green. But also, let's just talk generally about, look, obviously, Indiana has these 3 tough games coming up against Purdue, Ohio State, and Michigan State. If Indiana's going to have any prayer at even competing in any of these 3 games, the guards are going to have to play really, really well. Robert Johnson's going to have to channel the magic that he had at Ohio State last year in this game, and certainly play better than he did against Illinois, or these games are not going to be nearly as close as that 2-point loss against Illinois.
Yeah, I think, it's a difficult situation with him, with Devonte, because the reality is, like, it's easy to sit and say, well, don't play this guy and don't play this guy. Well, you have to play someone. And so the question at some point becomes who that's going to be. And when you really kind of look down how these guys have played over the course of Big Ten play, there's not an obvious answer to what they are. I mean, I went through today and just tried to look at offensive ratings on a game-by-game basis, just using the stats on KenPom. And so if you look at, kind of sit Robert Johnson aside for now, because, obviously he's unimpeachable in my eyes. But if you look at, who would potentially, be in that point guard spot, whether it's Newkirk, Devonte, or Al Durham, I basically said, all right, how many games were they over 100 as an offensive rating? And that's just really kind of like a baseline where every possession you use, you're generating a point. So that's not really a high bar by any means. And as a team, the only guy who's been there in over half of the Big Ten games is Juwan Morgan. And so you look, 3 of the games for Newkirk, 2 for Green, 2 for Durham. And then you look at how many games they had where they were under 70, which is an extremely low bar. So even to say, these are bad games, like these are really bad, or at least really inefficient games. How many did they have under 70? Newkirk had 4, Devonte had 5, Al Durham had 4. So all 3 of those guys have more, like, categorically poor and inefficient games than they had even average games, I would say. And so that becomes difficult because at that point, those are the 3 guys that you could put in at that point guard spot. I mean, I think we've established at this point that Robert Johnson is not, just not going to be the primary ball handler on this team, hasn't performed all that well in that kind of role before. And so it kind of becomes what, who do you want to go with? And I think the challenge is Devonte is a guy, unlike almost everybody else on this team, who can create his own shot. Everybody else, as we talked about last night, is very reliant on other people to get them going, whether that's, a feed from Juwan Morgan or things like that. I would argue that Juwan and Devonte are really the only guys who can create their own shots. And even though they do that in different ways, they're really the only guys that put in that bucket. So I think that's a lot of the reason that Archie went with Devonte. I thought he had a lot of good things to say about him after the game. I don't think he was overly, disappointed in his play. Obviously, the play at the end of the game made, one of 2 reads, either one of which would have been right. It was just that the pass was, short hopped really hard into Juwan's shin. And to Juwan's credit, he's standing there in the hallway after the game saying, I should have caught it. That's my fault. I think most people would argue otherwise, but so I think that's
really leadership on that, by the way.
Yeah,
I thought that
agreed.
was
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it becomes difficult. Devonte, we've talked about this from the beginning of the season. He can do things that other guards on the team can't do. And as a result of that, you're going to have to give him playing time. If you get to a point next year where Finney is the guy that everybody hopes he can be and can step in right away and play, then maybe you then you've got a different option. But right now, there's not a clear cut front runner in that pack. And I think Archie's taking it game by game and seeing who's playing well and trying to mix and match those guys as best he can. And last night, Devonte was playing better. And while he made mistakes, I think that's kind of what we've come to expect from him. And to think he's going to come out and play a perfect game, or to think IU's going to come out and not turn the ball over, is unrealistic. And so you just want to see him slowly progress toward being a more consistent player. And, hopefully he takes those steps.
I also think I want to appreciate what Archie's doing is that he does sub guys who make mistakes, and it's not necessarily just as a punitive measure. You can see they're working with those guys on the sidelines. Like, hey, look at this. Look at, like when you throw a bad pass into a forced situation. Hey, look to your left. The guy coming off the screen was wide open. Like, it's not. It doesn't feel like it's, oh, you turned it over, you're out. It feels like there is teaching going on, and these guys are actually facing a playing time consequence for their actions, but they're also, getting better as a result of it. And I thought that last night there was a lot of that from the coaching staff, just rotating guys in and talking to them and making sure they saw what they did wrong as opposed to just sit. I thought that was a positive.
That potential Finney Langford backcourt has always sounded pretty good, but it sounds a lot better after games like last night, I think. A lot better. All right.
You know what would be really good? Just somebody who can shoot. Just anybody. I don't care. If there's a fan out there right now and you can hit like 50% from three and like 75% from the line, go try out. See what happens.
I might be able to do that. All right. I might take you up on that. Okay, we're going to talk IU-Purdue next. Andy, you've prepared the 3 reasons why Indiana will beat Purdue, right? That was your assignment for this week.
How long is the break we're about to take right now? I just need to know. Asking for a friend.
All right, coming up next here on the Assembly Call, we will talk that IU-Purdue game that is coming up on Sunday. What do the Hoosiers have to do to compete and make this a game on Sunday at Simon Scott Assembly Hall? Stick with us. All right, 13:41 for that segment.
By the way, to any of our listeners, don't ever approach a player and tell him you can teach him how to shoot free throws better. Ever. Did you see that Kansas guy?
Yeah.
He kept repeatedly.
Okay, but maybe the guy shoots great, and he really could teach them how to shoot free throws better.
I did appreciate his relentlessness in the whole thing.
I do.
That he repeatedly was doing it. I mean, and try to offer advice, but to really be
he just loves his favorite team, guys. Okay.
I mean, you have been offering your help as the shot doctor, so you're only one step removed from that.
I haven't showed up at anybody's front door, Jared.
But you have plane reservations for February 23rd, so we don't know what your motives are.
It's going to be too late. It's the end of the season, so I don't really know.
I know. Seriously, fix the last game.
Fix the free throws before the Big Ten tournament. Let's take New York by storm, and then have a week off to celebrate afterwards.
I'm gonna grab something, guys. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. So, Andy, we're going to kick this segment over to you.
Oh, God.
I mean, that's
kind of a bummer. I would have updated with the stats from tonight's game, but it's probably just as well they didn't.
I mean, let's try to sound a bit of a hopeful tone. I mean, I think neither one of us. I mean, we can talk about it, obviously, but it's just a really, really bad matchup. So I guess that's what we need to stress. Set expectations.
It's a lot like Michigan State. Find stuff to build off of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we don't need to spend an inordinate amount of time here because we've got some decent questions to discuss.
Okay.
For whatever. So
you lead. I mean, Andy can go nuts on Purdue. I haven't watched them enough this year to have a deep appreciation. I've seen them a couple times, but it's Purdue I don't like watching.
Fair. That's fair. That is fair. Okay.
I mean, what good has ever come out of West Lafayette, Jared? I
mean, Robert Finney, although he's Lafayette, he's not West Lafayette.
No. One of the 3 members on this panel lived there for a while.
He did. He did.
It's unfortunate.
Hey, you know what, though? West Lafayette High School is a darn good high school.
Yeah.
Oh, Ohio State's down 13.
Yes, to Penn State. Yes.
They got Josh Reeves back.
Are they on Big Ten Network?
Yeah.
That was a big opportunity for Indiana getting to play Penn State without Josh Reeves.
We've been lucky this year with injuries. I will say that. I mean, of course, we're unlucky because we're missing.
Yeah, we've played some teams at the right time.
Really have.
That's for sure. Playing Minnesota without Coffee was helpful.
Michigan State was a nice payback.
Yeah, that was vengeance.
Either the right time or the complete worst time. Either one.
Yeah. That evened out all the good luck Indiana had all year with scheduling.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this. Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Go to assemblycall.com/join right now to learn how to subscribe to our email newsletter. If you want to get more out of being an IU basketball fan, then you really do need to be on our newsletter list. You will get our weekly Six-Banner Sunday news roundups, as well as our post-game analysis emails that we send the morning after every IU game. It is all free, and it will make you a smarter IU basketball fan. Again, the URL is assemblycall.com/join. I am Jared Morris. I'm here with the usual crew, Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and it is time to look ahead to Indiana's matchup against Purdue coming up this weekend. Look, anytime Indiana plays at home at Simon Scott Assembly Hall, you always think that there is a chance, that there should be a chance for Indiana to win. Hopefully, the crowd is there and gets there early and is loud and makes it as difficult of an environment as humanly possible, because I think Indiana is really going to need that in this game, because this is one of the best teams in Purdue history. They are currently, at least at last check, they are in the top 5 in KenPom adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency. I looked it up, and I think only 6 or 7 teams have finished in the top 5 in both of those in the last 10 or 12 years, and all but one went on to win the national championship. So we'll obviously have to see if they finish the season that way, but that just kind of tells you how efficient they are as a team and gives you some context for how well they're playing. They are really, really good and really, really efficient. And Andy, as we should talk about now, not only are they really good and really efficient, but because of the makeup of their roster and their size and what Indiana is missing because of injury now, it is a particularly bad matchup as well. So all of that to say, this is a really, really challenging game for Indiana on Sunday.
Yeah, no question. They actually dropped, at least as I'm looking at it now, after playing Michigan tonight as we record this, they dropped to 10th in defensive efficiency because Michigan was
did they really?
Fantastic in the second half. But they're still first in conference play in both offensive and defensive efficiency, so they didn't fall that far. But yeah, I mean, they're really coming in on a roll. They've won 16 in a row. Derek Schultz from Query and Schultz, he tweeted out 5-0 versus the RPI top 50, 12-0. This is during that 16-game streak. 12-0 versus KenPom top 100, 20.5 average margin of victory, 23.1 average margin of victory against teams that aren't Michigan. So, Michigan's played them really well both times. I think with their personnel just kind of gives some unique challenges, as you saw early in the season when they went up to Michigan. So, yeah, obviously, Isaac Haas presents a huge challenge for IU in the same way that some of the Michigan State guys did inside, and Michigan in some ways was able to try to take advantage of him defensively, which is really what you kind of have to do and hope that you can get him in foul trouble. They baited the officials into at least one kind of bogus charge call tonight, where he basically got called for a foul for being big. So IU needs to.
It was a foul. It was a foul against Purdue.
Yes.
Then it was fully legitimate.
Okay, fair enough. So so that obviously is difficult, but they're also first in the nation in 3-point shooting. So even when you look at you kind of point your attention to Haas and some of the things he can do inside, even some of the things that Vince Edwards can do inside. They're shooting the 3 as well as anybody in the country. And that becomes, just an even bigger challenge for an IU team that has really allowed a number of teams to get hot within Assembly Hall. So, they just present so many challenges there. And then obviously the same size that gives you trouble on the offensive end gives you trouble on the defensive end as well. They're, 4th in the nation in 2-point field goal defense. So that, becomes really difficult. And they don't put teams on the line, which for IU would be good. That part will actually be fine. But so it's just, a really good team. And I think, some people underestimated them certainly with losing Swanigan and, feeling like they'd really take a big step back. I think in some of their challenges last year, we're trying to figure out, like, can they play Swanigan and Haas together? That now kind of goes out the window, and they can play differently. Obviously, he was a tremendous player, but they really have hardly skipped a beat other than those couple of games in the battle for Atlantis earlier in the season. So certainly a tall challenge. I think the Assembly Hall factor will be a big one if I can get off to a hot start. Really, kind of put some pressure on them from an environment standpoint, but will be I think probably even harder than the Duke matchup going into it. Just as you kind of Duke, I think it was a little bit easier in some ways to try to figure out, like, oh, here's a young team going into Assembly Hall. You can kind of talk yourself into a few things that I'm not sure you can talk yourself into with this one.
Well, Duke doesn't play defense, so
also,
that helps.
Important.
Well, what I would say is this Ohio State team looks good. They might, hang a banner for a Sweet 16 or something. I mean, that's, since
Ohio State.
Well, no. What was I going to say? Purdue hangs them for Final Fours, right? So, maybe they'll get to an Elite Eight and hang another one, because that's what's important up there.
But you have your Purdue vitriol ready to go this week. I like it. You are ready for rivalry.
Yeah, it's rivalry week. What are you guys doing? You're sitting here talking about how great they are.
I've gotten soft in my old age.
Nothing makes me less happy to do than to talk about how good they are, but I do have to acknowledge that they're incredibly good.
Fair enough. They look good. I actually think they're better than last year, and they lost Swanigan. So, and the thing is that they're developing players. You've got to give them credit for that. They're not just recruiting, top level guys. They're developing guys. And that's what I think that Indiana looked at and said, with a guy like Archie Miller, that's what you do. You make your players better over time. And you try and get those top level guys that every school tries to get. And that will be fair, that you have to say that Archie Miller's in the mix for a lot of those guys, especially next year, the ones he's been able to recruit for a full year. And he's still in the mix for a Romeo Langford and was close on some other guys, but you also bring in guys who can be the backbone of your program and develop and provide consistency. And that's Matthias and Edwards and guys like that. And to give them credit, they've done that. And it's, it's hard to sit here as an Indiana fan to do that, as Andy said, but you have to give them credit for what they've done and give Matt Painter and his staff credit for making their guys better over time. Because they're not guys you looked at when they got in on campus and were like, man, that's an all Big Ten guy in 3 years. You look at him as like, yeah, it looks like a solid player, but they've played above their projected level.
Mm-hmm. So I think, but let's talk about at least a couple things that, like, if IU does these things well, there could be a chance to end with some positivity before we transition to other things.
Paint the picture. Let's say that we come on the post-game show, Indiana has won this game. What transpired? Because we know there's thousands of scenarios for how Indiana loses it, but what transpires in the few scenarios where they win it?
Purdue's bus got stuck on the 37.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be too drunk to talk about it if IU plays well enough to win, so that'll be difficult. But, I think one is certainly getting off to a hot start, really get the crowd in the game early. There's no concerns about getting down to Bloomington after, on a work night. There's no concerns about class. There's no concerns about any of that. So I think they got to get off to a hot start. Two would be trying to find a way to get Haas in foul trouble, which is really going to mean that Juwan Morgan has a really big game, because he's a guy who can, maybe a little bit similar to Mo Wagner, put some pressure on him defensively. Gotta protect the ball, and I think gotta make a lot of threes. It doesn't mean necessarily have to shoot a lot, but you're going to have to offset some of this. That's really what Michigan was doing. They were hitting some really tough threes in the game, but I think that's really a big one. Find a way to do that. Doesn't mean go shoot 50% of your shots from 3-point range, but somebody's going to have to hit a few to loosen up the defense.
Yeah. Ryan and I were just talking in the chat. I mean, obviously the crowd has to show up, and the Simon Scott Assembly Hall crowd, it's been a little up and down this year, but it typically shows up for the big games. This is obviously a big game against a rival opponent. And I think that's one of the, and we didn't talk about this on the post-game show, but that's one of the worst parts about that loss to Illinois is, you win that game. Now you're on a 2-game winning streak. You're 6-3, sitting in 5th place in the conference, and there's some real momentum. A little bit different than 5-4. You just lost to an 0-8 team. I just hope that didn't take any of the wind out of the sails of people who would have otherwise shown up, loud and rowdy and ready to go. And who knows, we'll have to wait until Sunday to see. But it certainly would have been nice to see what that atmosphere would have been like if Indiana had been able to win that Illinois game and really be coming in with some momentum.
You know what I would say, as far as fans go, my favorite season of watching fans was Tom Crean's first year when that team was awful and people were giving that team standing ovations for 4 minutes of good play, and they were giving that team. And that's what we need right now. It's not that bad, obviously, as the product on the floor, and people probably expected more. But you know what? When the team is down, you need to support them even more. They need it even more. And they need it certainly on Sunday. And I know it's hard.
I just feel like the fan base is in kind of a weird place right now. Where
they shouldn't be. The future's bright. We've got a great young coach.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean,
we've got a great recruiting class coming in. It's a transitional year, but you know what? Show up and show that, and look, Greg Doyle and I disagree on a lot of things, but he said something the other night when they beat Maryland that, you know what? If you want to be regarded as one of the top programs in the country, your fans need to perform as much as the basketball team needs to perform. You need to perform like one of the top, fan bases in the country. And
yep.
Indiana's fans have not done that this year. And you want recruits to come to your school, and you talk about Romeo Langford, and you talk about all these guys, and you want to impress, and you're mad at the coaching staff. Well, you got to provide an atmosphere where these guys want to come and play. And it's on everyone who loves this program to make it better, not just the coaching staff. They need help, and the team needs help as well. Slow clap.
Oh, no, that was good.
That
was good. I was going to try and explain it away a little bit, and you took the right tack of just going straight for the jugular, and you're right. So that was, that was a really good point.
I've said this many times to the students. You know what? You got 4 years with the games you get to go to at Indiana. If you're missing a single one, you're a fool, because it's not easy to get tickets once you're out, and it's much more expensive. You need to take advantage of those tickets, because going to Indiana basketball games is a thing you will never surpass as a sports fan later on. I mean, very rarely is there anything that surpasses that. So get your butts in those seats and watch those games. I don't care if you're sitting in the balcony. Show up and yell.
Yep. All right. Coming up in our final segment, we will answer your questions. We've got several good ones, including Brandon, who asked us for our favorite Indiana-Purdue game memories. So that should be fun. Stick with us. All right, that was 11:30.
Gosh, I can't even think.
That was a good rant there, Ryan.
Thanks.
Good stuff.
I can't even think of Indiana-Purdue memory. What's a recent one?
40. Well, I mean, the Will Sheehy one should be your obvious one. Up there in Mackey.
Oh,
where he went 9 for 9.
Yelling at the crowd.
Did we lose that game? No, we
won. No, we killed them. The better game, I thought, was the one the year before that was Victor Oladipo's coming out party.
2013, 12, 13?
2012. I think even Remy Abel drained some threes that game.
I'm trying to pull the schedules up. In
13, we annihilated them.
Yeah, I think that might be my favorite one. Is that 83-55? Yeah. We crushed them.
41-11. Talk amongst yourselves while I do some math.
Well, the one that Jared's talking about is the away game when they won 97-60, I think.
That was in 2013. And then the year before they won by 13, I think. When Oladipo was just awesome, and I had all my Purdue friends texting me like, "Oh my God, who is this?"
Yeah,
he's an all-star, baby. He's an all-star.
Good God, I read off those offensive ratings for the other one. Listen to these from the 2013 game at Purdue. I'm just going to run these down. Doesn't matter who they belong to. The lowest one of anybody who recorded one was 127, 139, 147, 154, 160, 168, 172, Watford 193.
Jeez. We beat Purdue 83-55 at home that year, and Oladipo only had 3 points. That tells you that everybody was.
All right, so we got to be out of here at 8:23. So we got that question.
No, it was the home game when Sheehy was 9 for 9, not the road game.
Yeah, sorry, I thought it was the road game. He definitely was screaming stuff at the crowd on the road. Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, that could be any game with him, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. All right, so we'll lead off with that one. We've got another question about Juwan in the NBA. He actually is starting to show up on some top 100 lists now, so we can hit that.
Figured it would take some time. He'd need to perform the big game. I don't think he's going to go if he's 70. I think he'll go if he's guaranteed to be drafted.
I think that's what I saw him at. One of them was 75 or something like that.
Yeah, Bassini had him at 75. I know. I mean, the G League is a more realistic option now, as it should be.
There's two-way contracts now. I mean, where they can bring you up and put you down. And
if I had to put money on it right now, I think he goes.
I don't.
If I had to, because I think that's his goal.
Today, I do not. Ask me at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean that it's the information we have is so incomplete. But I'm just saying, if you made me bet on
but
what
the thing is, I wouldn't feel that awful about him going because of the guys we have.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a shame to not see him play his senior year, but I'd be so happy for him that it wouldn't even.
Yeah, and with a guy like Race Thompson already on campus, I think it's not going to be as rocky a transition as.
No, but I mean, having Juwan as a senior
of course,
to be the leader. I mean, shoot, you look at. I was thinking about that earlier today. Like, say that Romeo does come, and you've got a 1-2 punch of Juwan and Romeo Langford. I mean, who else in the conference is going to be able to compete with that?
And Finney bringing the ball up.
Yeah, I mean,
and Deron Davis healthy.
Anyway, I don't want to. Let's not dream about a Juwan Romeo combination when neither of those guys might be there. So, anyway.
All right. I'm going to take that road game that year.
8 minutes and 23 seconds. That's what we have.
That 93 game that you have written in the notes, that was the Greg Graham free throw game, correct?
26 out of 28, baby.
Yep. I think I'm going to go with that one because I was there. The crowd was screaming, chanting SAT at Glenn Robinson when he was shooting free throws. That was good.
Yeah, that was his sophomore year because he had to sit out the first year.
Yep. Was that at Assembly Hall?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at Assembly Hall. God damn, Glenn Robinson was so good.
Yeah. I certainly don't have any good memories playing them when I was in school because freaking Chad Austin would
I don't
some kind of shot every freaking time.
Where did you graduate, Andy?
2000.
God,
2000. Okay.
Yeah.
2000 or 2002.
All right, let's do this.
All right.
Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, wrapping up another week of talking Indiana basketball. And it is that time of the program where we answer your questions. A lot of good ones sent in this week, and so let's get right to them. Let's start. We'll do our IU-Purdue memories here in just a minute, but we've got this question from Alex. How do you think Juwan's game would translate to the NBA? Do you think the appeal of a solid recruiting class with promising scorers, more team and system experience, and then a potential of an NCAA run will persuade him to return with a higher possible draft stock? Now, the reason that I wanted to address this week is because Juwan, for the first time, is starting to show up on top 100 list. Sam Vecini put his out. I don't know where's Sam's with the Athletic now. But he had Juwan, I think 74th or 75th in his top 100. So a little bit of buzz is starting to build. So this went from a totally ridiculous off-the-wall statement that Ryan made in the offseason to something that may end up coming true.
Just pulled that out of nowhere, Jared. I didn't have any idea what I was talking about.
But here's what I would say to this. I think, especially if you read, some of Juwan's comments from a few weeks ago when he was talking about, texting back and forth with OG and some of these guys and, and getting to see Victor, like it sounds to me like his focus is very much on getting to the NBA. And shouldn't be a surprise. All the guys who are playing at high level college programs, their focus is to get there, but now if he sees a little bit of this daylight, my guess is that, the appeal of this good recruiting class and maybe, seeing his senior year through and seeing what the program can be, I'm sure that would be appealing, but I don't in any way think that would keep him in Bloomington if he hears what he needs to hear about possibly being drafted, or if being a G League player is something that would appeal to him. And I think if it is, and he has the opportunity to go, then he absolutely should. And we'll all lament the fact that we don't get to see senior year Juwan Morgan, but I would hope that we would all be ecstatic for him that he gets to achieve his dream a year early. And so that's what I would say to that. Ryan, do you think any of those reasons would sway a guy like Juwan without knowing him? And how do you think his game would translate to the NBA based on kind of what he's been showing us recently?
Well, I think he's going to be sort of a stretch four who can play inside and out and defend inside and out. He's certainly not huge, so he's going to have to be able to hit a jumper, which, I mean, he's shown at times, but not consistently. And so I think that would be very important. Look, I think he's going to put his name in no matter what, which is the smart thing to do. I think he's going to go maybe as far as go to the combine, work out, see what guys tell him, get the feedback, which every player who is eligible should get the feedback from the NBA.
I do it after every season. I mean, I mean, we submit our stuff to the professional podcasters and radio
people, and they tell us what we need to work on. No, look, I think that is absolutely something he should do. And on top of that, I think that, look, it used to be when it was the D League, it seemed like that was a death sentence to your career to be stuck there. But the G League now has the, teams have the ability to bring you up, put you on a two-way contract where they can bring you up, get you some playing time. You're seeing Thomas Bryant play a lot in the G League for the Lakers. And quite frankly, they love him. They just don't have a spot on the roster for him right now, but they want him to be a part of their future. And they've talked about that openly. So they're really using it to develop players now, as opposed to just hanging on to guys in case there's an injury. They're actually using it to develop players. And so it's similar to playing, Americans playing in Europe. It's not the death sentence to your career that it used to be. And so it's definitely a different landscape. I think it's going to depend on whether or not a team falls in love with him and tells him, hey, we'll draft you in the second round at the very least. If he's not guaranteed that, then I would say he should probably come back and continue to increase his stock, because he'll enter next year certainly with a lot more people looking for him, and looking at what he's doing.
All right, Andy, quick one to you, and then we'll get to our IU-Purdue game memories. This is from Meatsickle. Why are we such a different team on the road, and what will our overall record be before the Big Ten tournament, which we will obviously win?
I mean, I think obviously. I think the road thing is a lot with just the new system and being a team that at this point isn't quite as confident in kind of what its pillars really are, I guess you could say. And so I think some of that, they're still too easy to get out of what they want to do. I mean, last night was the perfect example of, really being allowing themselves to get sped up in a situation where they didn't need to. And in terms of, overall record, there's 9 games left. I'm going to say maybe they end up doing the same thing they did in the first half and go 5-4, which would put them at 17-13. So I think probably 17-13, 18-12 is, I guess, the most likely record I would say at this point.
And if they sweep these next 3 games,
look, no one would be happier than I would if they sweep the next 3 games. So at that point, I'm more than happy to talk about any kind of NCAA tournament stuff. But I will tell you that losing to Illinois dropped them about 15 to 20 spots in the RPI last night. So outside of the top 100, so it's work to be done for sure.
Work to be done. Okay, so Brandon asks us for our favorite Indiana-Purdue game memories. Andy, I have a sneaking suspicion that our favorite memory is going to be the same. In fact, we were both probably at this game and passed each other in the hallways of Assembly Hall at some point, not knowing that many years later we would be talking about it on an IU basketball postgame show.
Yes, certainly. For me, it was the 1993 game. I went with my dad. We drove down to the game. There was, a few storylines. It was after Alan Henderson got hurt. Pat Graham hadn't played in a while, suited up and was kind of surprised. My dad and I were like looking down, like who's gonna play, and we saw people going through the layup line. You're trying to just go through and figure it out. And so, Pat Graham came out and played that game. I think he came in and immediately scored a basket and maybe hit a 3 right away. Actually watched some of that game on YouTube over the holidays, and so that was great. Greg Graham making 26 free throws, obligatory Greg Graham reference, and the crowd
26 out of 28. 26 out of 28.
Yeah. God, what we wouldn't give for that. How fitting is that?
Could you have shot last night?
Yeah, and then the crowd mercilessly chanting SAT at Glenn Robinson every time he was at the free throw line, just deafening. Was a lot of exciting things in that game, and obviously, our favorite team that we've talked about so many times being involved gives it a little bit extra as well.
Yeah, and Indiana moved to 13-0 with that victory. They would actually lose the next game to Ohio State, the first and only Big Ten game they would lose that year. Just an awesome game, an awesome memory. Ryan, which Purdue game that Marco Killingsworth played in was your favorite?
Well, I took my dad to my senior year. I took my dad to the Purdue game and wrote a column about it that I'll try and find for you so you can put on the website at some point. It's actually a really nice column. It's about my dad going to his first IU game. He had never been to one before, and they won.
That's cool.
So big day. And he didn't know I was going to write it about him. So it was
that's awesome.
That was a good one. But my favorite actual game was 2013 when they went up to Mackey and Purdue was all fired up thinking they were going to knock off Indiana, who I believe came in at number 3, and Indiana beat them 97-60. So beat them by 37. All the starters were in double digits. Cody Zeller had a double-double. Oladipo had 17, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, and a block, and no turnovers. That was probably my favorite one because all my Purdue fans are talking about how they were going to be the ones to beat Indiana and knock them off.
Yeah, the other one that really came to mind for me right away is the game the year before that in 2012. When that team, obviously, which kind of I think surpassed certainly expectations. And Victor Oladipo went up there in that game, and it was really his coming out party. And a lot of my Purdue friends were kind of texting me afterwards, like, who is this guy? Like, that was just a crazy good performance. And of course, you know what Victor would turn into, but that was a great win, a little bit less expected than the 2013 win, but there have been so many great memories. And look, hopefully Indiana is able to create another good one on Sunday. Obviously the odds are against them, but we've seen crazy things happen in rivalry games. And so hopefully something crazy happens on Sunday. And that'll do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording, or you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers and make free throws. And cut.
Wow. Woo! Crazy into that game.
So wait, what happened?
So Bates
Did Penn State win?
Bates Diop hit a 3 to tie it with like 3 seconds left. And Penn State ran up the floor and banked in about a what? What would you say, Andy? Like a 35-footer?
Yeah.
Like what Blackman did against them last year?
Yeah.
We're way further out than that.
Oh, wow.
He was like halfway between half court and the 3-point line. But
he banked it in.
Who made it?
It's
Carr?
either Carr or Stevens. I get those two mixed up.
They were so it was tied, and he hit the 3 to win it.
Yeah, he hit the 3. It was 82-79. But Ohio State, I think, scored. They were down almost 10 with like 5 minutes left, and they Bates Diop hit 3 threes in the last, I don't know, 2 minutes. Andrew Dockage made a couple of really good plays, and he hit a big 3 during the stretch too. And they had come back to tie it up on the. I mean, the one he hit to tie it was deep as well. And then, and I think there was maybe 5 seconds left, and Penn State just ran it up and banked it in.
Andrew Dockage, big fan of the show.
Crazy. I was waiting on how Penn State was going to blow the game in typical Pat Chambers fashion, but they managed to unblow it briefly.
Wow. Not in a sexual way.
Not in a sexual way.
Absolutely not.
You know who Andrew Dockage reminds me of? Aaron Kraft.
Oh my God. Shut up.
Dan loves some Aaron Kraft. So.
Oh, God.
All right. So we got 3 straight games here with really nothing to lose.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, except for 3 games, obviously.
Well, but besides that, yeah.
But there's not a lot of pressure on us.
Yeah,
it's a really crappy position to be in. I mean, it really stinks.
Yeah.
But that's just where this team is right now.
Yeah, another one though. Sunday, Tuesday, then Saturday, Monday. Yeah, stupid Big Ten.
Yeah, what? I mean, is this all compressed because of the
the tournament?
What's funny is that I saw somebody wrote earlier that Purdue and Wisconsin only have one day in between games, and that was when everybody had one.
Yeah, and they don't have any others.
So I'm like, I don't understand how, from a scheduling perspective, like it ends up that way. Like if you want to do it, then at least make it equitable as you go through, the process. But who knows?
Dude should be fired. Jim Delaney needs to get his ass fired.
Yeah. Well, and then they have that game over last weekend where Minnesota and Ohio State are playing there at Madison Square Garden to generate interest for it, and 4,000 people show up. Great idea.
Yeah, awesome. Great job, guys. Like seriously, who
take a home game away from somebody where you'd have 15,000 people and have it at a place where nobody cares about either team and have fun.
It was, by the way, it was Tony Carr with the 3.
Okay, yeah, I knew it was Carr Stevens. I wasn't sure which.
Just showed up on my tongue. All right, guys, I gotta get back to work.
All right, gents.
All right. Well, we spent a lot of time together over the last. Well,
we have.
Actually, I don't know that all 3 of us have actually been here too much over the course of time, but
that's true.
Yeah, because Jared wasn't there Monday and I wasn't there yesterday.
I wasn't there Friday.
We all there Sunday.
Friday. So.
That's right.
We all there Sunday.
I'll be there.
Yeah. Yep. I'll be there.
All right. Cool. Sounds good. No football.
Hey, we got to figure out where we're going to dinner.
Oh, yeah.
So we can get reservations.
We should definitely talk about it live as part of the show because that really makes for compelling.
Hey, I mean, anybody can shut it off. They can shut it off whenever they want to. But
let's go to.
You want to go back to Zagreb? I mean, I'm always good with that.
Yeah,
and teach Andy the value of not getting a medium well steak.
Oh boy.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
It was so much better medium rare. Come on.
Jeez.
All right, so Zagreb. So that'll be Saturday.
Mhm.
All right, I'll get reservations there, and then should we go to the tap after the game? By the way, Ryan, I got I'm gonna have a media pass for the game.
Are you? I haven't asked for one yet.
Yeah, so I'll be doing that. So I guess, yeah, because I kind of want to stay and go to the press conference.
Okay. I didn't last year, but you certainly can since you've never done it before.
I think it'd be interesting to go.
Yeah.
So if you want to leave right after that, and you and Andy want to meet up and maybe do a quick live video like on the walk to wherever you're going to go.
I mean, at worst, we can have Michael or somebody do one. Don't you think?
Oh, we totally could. Yeah.
Okay. And then did you say you wanted to do something with Galen, like at the media school?
Yeah, Saturday. We'll actually do a post-game show for the game. We're just not going to do it until Saturday.
Okay.
But we can just go record at the media school. So
we've talked to him about that. Like,
yeah, I just need to set up the details, but that way, we'll kind of have someplace quiet to do it.
Cool.
And then we should be covered for Thursday, because I think we're going to try and record Assembly Call Radio at Kent Station before his show starts. And then Andy's just going to try and get there when he can.
That morning, if you want to pick me up at my hotel, you can do that, or I can just Uber over. Either way, it doesn't matter. But we'll coordinate.
All right, I'll call you when I get in town.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right,
fellas.
good stuff.
All right. We'll talk to you guys.
Enjoy your few days off.
Yeah, we'll do our best. All right, we'll talk to you Sunday.
All right, see you.
All right, later.